So this is the most hardcore ATV you can buy. It's always been that way. Nothing comes close to it as far as hardcoreness. And I'm not saying that's all a good thing, but it is hardcore. The main reason this is the most hardcore stock ATV is because of these tires. Look at the size of that shoulder lug. They put it on a skinny wheel, so that just juts out very aggressively. These are the 30 by 9.5 by 14 Outlaw 2s. They're not my favorite tire in the world because, number one, they're just too aggressive for me, and they're pretty stiff and they're pretty heavy. We'll weigh them in a second and compare them to some of the other tires I have in the garage, like these 28s that come on my XMR. That's a big difference right there, right? This is the Highlifter mud version. It comes on a 30 that literally has a giant paddle on the side of it. The Can-Ams come on a 28 or a 30 with a very mild tread that is not nearly as aggressive, doesn't have any side knobbies sticking off, and is a lot lighter. So the fact that Polaris will sell you this with a warranty with these tires on it is very impressive. Can-Am has never put a tire anything like this on any of their machines. So that is why, right off the back, that's the most obvious reason it's a hardcore mud ATV. The second reason is the gearing. Both high and low range are significantly lower in this thing. We'll do some top speed runs later, and it is, even in high range, this thing is geared very low. The reason they do that is because if you forget to put it in low with a tire this aggressive, you could instantly blow the belt. They don't want that happening, so they geared it low and high range as well. So that's pretty hardcore, right? Most of the Can-Ams, you don't even get a low range. The XMR 570, 650, 850, none of those have lower gears, and they're supposed to be extreme mud racers. This baby gets way lower gears. Now, my Gen 3 Can-Am does get slightly lower gears with the XMR. It's not a huge difference. It's like 10%. But this is geared lower already, even in like the base model. So, but yeah, this is hardcore. I mean, super low gears, super aggressive tires. They also took it a step further and really modified the suspension and the steering. Can-Am gives you the same suspension and steering pretty much on an XMR or a base model. This thing has shocks that are super limited on up travel. That's the up travel you have before you contact the bump stop in the rear. Here's the up travel you have before you contact the bump stop in the front. I don't know the exact metric, we can look at it later, but I think this thing has like 3.5 inches of travel. The reason they do that is so that this big knobby tire doesn't rip out your headlight, right? Because you only have that much up travel with this extremely tall factory tire. Now, what I like to do is put a lift kit, do some trimming, put some other shock. You can do some bigger travel type stuff. But that's all the kind of stuff I'm gonna be looking at for my buddy to make some ride quality improvements. So that's super hardcore, right? They got you limited suspension. They got you a heavier spring rate so you don't sag when your bike's full of mud. Can-Am doesn't do that on their XMRs, right? Also, the steering is very limited. That's how far the wheel cuts, okay? That is full lock right there. That is pretty limited. Full lock. It looks like it's cutting pretty far, but on a bike this big, that is really not a lot of steering angle. We could compare it to my Outlander over here. See the difference? Yeah. This thing has about twice the max steering angle. Again, the reason they do that is because it's a hardcore mud bike. If you had more steering angle than that with this type of front locker and these big aggressive tires with 100 horsepower, you would snap axles all the time, especially in reverse. And also you'd be rubbing the frame, you'd be rubbing all your snorkels that are right here. So they limit the steering to fit these big meats. The last thing I'm gonna talk about, which is why it's the most hardcore mud machine, is the cooling. So this thing has a giant radiator with dual fans. On my 850, I could have the radiator totally packed with mud, one fan clogged with mud, not spinning, and it never overheated. That's because that's a huge, badass radiator, and you've got redundancy on your cooling. You've also got big time belt cooling. And that's your engine intake right there, all factory up high. They're not quite high enough. That's one of the things we're correcting. This 1000 also seems to have a really nice, I think it's painted. Yeah, pretty sure that's a really nice finish. I wonder if it's painted. So yeah, your electronics are up as high as they could get them. Nice gasket where your fuses are. And your battery is even relocated up front. Wow, that's a huge battery on this 1000. That's almost an automotive size battery. Give you some scale. I guess maybe it has a bigger battery because they have the winch on it. Not really sure. But yeah, it's a hardcore machine for those reasons right there. The things I liked about it when I had mine was obviously it had good power. I put raked arms on mine and I had really good clearance on it. It was turning a 33-inch tractor tire with really no mods. I had a tune on it, but it would have turned them stock. I mean, it's got a phenomenal amount of torque and gearing, and pretty good clearance.